Welcome to the next installment of the Miami Group Sierra Club Virtual Backpack Series.
All right. Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome everyone to the second 2020 installment of our virtual webinars presented by the Miami Group Sierra Club. The Sierra Group Club is committed to a safety-first culture, and as a result, of course, suspended outings and events during the pandemic. But truly, we enjoy sharing our knowledge and experience with others and empowering them to get out there and experience the backcountry. So we've chosen this virtual platform to keep doing that through our Zoom presentations. And then, of course, once we get on the other side of that, we look forward to just more interactive and in-person events, of course, and enjoying the outdoors together with you all. In the meantime, stay safe. We ask you that you keep joining in on these presentations. So while a few people are signing in, I'd like to let you know that a PDF copy of this presentation has been posted to the Sierra Club website. At the end of this presentation, we'll place a link into the chat box for that. You'll also find a whole host of other things on the Sierra Club website as well: educational meetings, our newsletter, ways you can take action, and of course, our outings and events once those are restarted. So that brings us to the talk, and so thanks for joining us. My name is Bryan, trail name is Iceman, and I thru hiked the Appalachian Trail back in 2006 and 2007. So while it's been a bit since the thru hike, there's nothing that stays kind of more dear to my heart, and it's a place that I try to frequently go back to just as often as possible. Some of you might also know me as one of the co-owners at Roads, Rivers, and Trails. And so we're in downtown Milford. Hopefully you've stopped by. If not, please come give us a visit for any of your outdoor needs. You know, we really try to specialize and concentrate on just good service and expertise in everything outdoors, really. Also joining me is my good friend, Will Leapfrog. Will, if you want to say hi to the group.
Yeah, I'm Will, trail name Leapfrog, 2016 northbound thru hiker, otherwise back for regular visits on the AT pretty much yearly now. And I'll just kind of be monitoring the chat box to answer any questions that come up. And yeah.
Appreciate it, Will. Thank you for joining us. So here's the presentation, not merely a trail, but I actually want to start this off by launching a poll. And this is going to kind of help me understand where everyone's at as we go over the presentation. So how familiar are you with the Appalachian Trail? I think people are drawn from all different areas, all different walks of life, of course, and have different experiences. So how many people have been, you know, enchanted by the trail, but have less experience versus some more experience, firsthand experience on the trail? Looks like we're a little bit all over. I believe you could see this if you're on Facebook. Forgive me, because I'm not entirely sure, but we, you know, a lot of people that are understand and have followed the trail, but have not had on-trail time or limited trail time, and then a few people that have had some more significant on-trail time. So we're a little bit all over. It looks like we've got most of the votes in. All right. Awesome. Thank you guys for that input, as that definitely kind of helps as we go through the talk and me understanding where you guys are all coming from.
Bryan, would you like me to share the results so everyone can see them?
Yes, please. Oop.
There they are.
Awesome. Thank you, Nancy. So I want to start off, you know, we got a lot to cover today. So, you know, bear with me. Hopefully get you guys what you want, and that's what the chat box is for too. But the AT isn't just a hiking trail. In fact, when we talk about the AT, I'd say that only a fraction of the conversation is about the hike. The AT has built up a reputation to be much more than just a hike. It has an allure that captures people's imaginations and their hearts, and through time has built up a history that reinforces all of those stories. So endless firsthand encounters on the trail seem more like tall tales, and all the while it holds pieces of American history that we could go back and learn from and encounter at the same time. So this all started with Benton McKay's vision in 1921, and while on the top of Stratton Mountain, which is in Vermont, he had the idea to connect the lands with a single path as a signal of hope, freedom, exploration, expression, and escape. While this path was never meant to be traversed in full, in 1948, Earl Schaefer did exactly that. A veteran that went out and hiked the trail in its entirety, and he was the first. The Appalachians in general are the oldest mountain chain on Earth, and if you follow the geological footprint, it's really cool. You'll find that its sister mountains exist throughout Europe and Africa as well, and many countries have since developed their own trail systems and are registered as part of the International Appalachian Trail, which is really cool. So you could build obsessions upon obsessions that way. The AT travels 14 states and roughly 2,185 miles, changes every year, goes across 8 national parks, and to hike this path in full, it typically takes 5 to 6 months, although the fastest recorded time is now under 42 days to go this entire distance. You'll cross a road on average of every 4 miles and find a camper shelter about every 6 miles on average throughout that trail. Excuse me, the slides are turning a little slow. There we go. All right, so this is what we're going to go over throughout this presentation and some of the main topics we want to cover. We're going to cover hiking the trail, where to camp, when to go, and then more specifically, we're going to look at some sections of where you could go and how you might want to look at picking your trail. So details on those sections throughout. So hiking the Appalachian Trail is a little bit different than some other trails. For one, the way that it's marked. So very simply, it's marked by a white paint blazes. And so you will find those, and they try to not space them out any more than a quarter mile, although frequently you can walk to one and very easily see the next as you go. So it's considered pretty well marked, and it's also considered a pretty worn trail at this point. It's popular enough that you know, finding your way is mostly not a complicated endeavor. As far as terrain goes, however, it's a very mountainous path, so it's not like anything that we have locally. The terrain is going to be much more complicated, and it's going to vary state to state. There are states up north that believe in a more strenuous, more natural path. They'll have less bridges or less switchbacks of those back and forths, making them a little bit more complicated uphills. So that's going to vary some state to state. As far as wilderness dangers, a little bit more in line with what we can find regionally. Of course, is most of this is within, you know, a pretty quick shot of where we are here. But of course, disease, be it from water or insects, ticks, things of that nature. There's very little in the way of animal dangers, but of course we have black bears and snakes on trail as well. Getting lost, again, it's pretty well marked, so it's not going to be one of your major concerns. And there's a lot of resources to help you along the way. So we talked about guidebooks and apps that you can have to not only plan the trip, but to, while you're on the trail, kind of help keep you on path, right? So both the Appalachian Trail Conservancy and then also AWOL come out with different guidebooks on a yearly basis with all of the updates. If you're doing weekend or section hikes, you don't need to get the update every year. The ATC and National Geographic have map sets or individual maps to help you out. And then, of course, very popular now are different apps that you can just have on your smartphone. For example, Gut Hook is going to be the more popular one. And I believe last I checked, that was about $60. And there's no data required for that. That's more of like a on your phone download. So something that you could use and have day-to-day mapped out on your phone as well. And then, of course, there's other little details depending on the region of trail that you're going to. So animal protocols like pets. You can't have pets in certain areas, although there's very few, but we'll kind of get to some of those and what that looks like. So this is me when I started the trail. So this is in 2006 with my buddy Joe, another co-owner at RRT. And we took the names, the trail name. So you notice trail name on the Zoom call here and in the intro. I'm Iceman and Will is Leapfrog, right? And so we take these trail names, and a lot of that is about kind of escaping while you're on the Appalachian Trail. It's meant to be such an escape and such a kind of refresher for yourself that you're leaving behind past preconceptions or personalities and who you were, and you're starting anew, and you are on the AT, and it's like you're in a different place. So we'll talk about some of that real quick, because I think that is so much of what the AT is really about, so you hear a lot about trail angels. It's like, well, are angels real? What is a goat man, and is he friend or foe? And is magic just for children, or can we partake as well? So we'll dig into some of those Appalachian Trail mysteries. So first, we don't just look at trail names anymore. We look at trail families. So they've expanded since I hiked even. And so the trail families will take on new names. So this is Team Yard Sale. This is the first team I was introduced to. And Nate Dogg in the middle was one of our first through hikers that we helped support through RRT. And I got to know these guys and hike Katahdin with them to see their finishing moments. And it was just really cool. It just goes to speak of the community that the Appalachian Trail really brings in, and the friendships, lifelong friendships that it creates. So to Nate Dogg's right is Guinness. They met on the trail and were married when they came home. They live together in Colorado now. Oop. And then we look at just the shelter life and the rest of the community as well. This is actually from a hostel versus the shelter, but shelter life on the Appalachian Trail is really big too. It becomes a place of community again, where people are passing northbound and southbound, catching up on what might be ahead, seeing people in the registers, which we'll get to as well. And it really just becomes a gathering place. So it can be a little bit more social around the shelters, where the campsites, or if you wanted a hammock or tent, you might have a little bit more privacy, of course. So know that as you go out and kind of pick the way that you want to do the trail. This is an excerpt from a trail journal while we were on trail. So this journal entry is from 2006 actually, but Postcard came out with a book. He's a great artist. It's one of the more elaborate trail journal entries I think I've seen, but most shelters and even some campsites have trail journals. And this is great, because even if you don't run into this person, or maybe this person's in front of you, you're able to, well, for one, you're able to kind of see what's ahead. Maybe somebody coming in the other direction wrote some notes, something to look out for, an upset beehive, let's say. But you're also able to kind of track somebody and get to know them that might be just a few days in front of you the entire time you're walking. There's one shelter in front of you. And so Postcard was one of those people that we kind of followed for a number of weeks, if not months. And you kind of felt like you knew somebody without meeting them. So trail journals are a very cool part that ties in the community. And then we have our trail angels. So this one is Rob here. And then also we could see the, should be able to see the roof of another hostel there with all the postcards and thank yous from hikers past. And trail angels are very, very real. And there's just a number of people that have dedicated so much of their life to just really embracing the Appalachian Trail community and supporting them. And so Rob, for example, picked us up, helped slack pack us, fed us, gave us drink, gave us, shelter, and asked very, very little. So there's many hostels along the way, typically providing these shuttles, showers, room and board for very small fees because it's more of a way of life and more of a way to stay connected with their trail family and their trail community than anything else. So they really help build what the AT is. I couldn't imagine what the AT would be without these people, without this community looking out for you all the time, because they were able to provide the pick-me-up exactly when you needed it. There's the postcards there of all the hikers that had come through and sent back their thanks. This was at Bob Peoples at Kincora Hostel, one of the more famous trail angels. And then there's trail magic, right? Magic is also very, very real. So you start to understand how the Appalachian Trail is really more folklore than reality, which is, part of the allure to it, right? So trail magic can come in many, many forms. In this form, it was ungodly expensive tent set up with nobody else around, but on the inside had a space heater and a little mini hot dog cooker and a Tupperware full of condiments and everything else. And so you were to stumble upon it, go inside, warm yourself, feed yourself, and then enjoy the rest of your day hike. You probably could have also enjoyed your day there. It might also just include stumbling upon surprise food or drink. So I noticed on the ground there's a cherry pie, some oranges, banana. There was a Jack Daniel's cooler of sorts. And so, we were able to somebody stopped, dumped some extra food at the trailhead, and some hungry or desperate, or in this case, some very defeated hikers, as this was in the first week of our hiking, found this. And this was in the first 3 to 4 days of our hiking, found this and had spirits totally raised up. So remember that when you visit the AT as well, that you could be a trail angel, you could perform these acts of trail magic, bring up some ice cream sandwiches and sit in a trailhead one day, or whatever it may be, give somebody a ride and be part of that community. Is super fun to do on the other side too. So it's all real, all of the tall tales that you've heard. So we'll dive back now into some more logistics and some things like that. These are the things that you need to identify as you're planning your trip. As you're heading out, these are the things that you need to know before you head out. So whether it's one of the guidebooks, maps, or apps on your phone, you should be able to find these resources: roads, supplies or grocery, hostels, outfitters, rides or shuttles, your water sources, your camps, and your local regulations. So again, access is never more than 3 to 4 days from a road. Self-host service is pretty prevalent, but think about if you want to walk to town, hitchhike or shuttle. Consider permits, especially if you're in like one of the national parks, the Smokies or Shenandoah. And then always call a ranger station, whether it's a state park or national park or wherever you're at. Most of what you're traveling through, of course, is national park. So call a ranger station, get up-to-date information, and also check out updates on the Appalachian Trail Conservancy site. As far as where to camp, it's aplenty. So there's over 100 backcountry camps and 270 shelters along the trail. So as we go over some trip examples later, remember that the distance of your day is to some degree up to you. Established sites not only follow better leave no trace guidelines, but also often come with privies, sometimes food storage options, and nearby access to water. So you're going to want to stay at those places as well. While shelters are a preferred overnight option, please remember shelter etiquette as well. first come, first serve, limited capacity, and typically preferential treatment for through hikers, although I'm pretty sure we made that roll up. Lessons being that you should always have a tent with you as well. If you want a challenging hike but plush night, you should check out the hut system in the White Mountains in New Hampshire. So totally different kind of perspective on the AT. Lastly, check all regulations before camping. For example, the requirement of bear canisters for parts of Georgia over Blood Mountain, Jared Gap to Neal's Gap, I believe. Awesome. So here's an example of, and this was obviously not updated super recently with 2018 update, but you can find this same thing on the AT's website if you were to go there today. So check for updates. It might include washed out bridges, detours, problem bears, or closed shelters due to dead trees. So there's a whole lot that you can find. You can search state by state, section by section, and find the updates that are relevant to you. So here's a few more right there. Some closed camps, for example, not uncommon in the Smokies due to problem bears, due to the frequency of travel there. All right, take a break in a second, bear with me. When to go, right? So you see the flag in the background. We went to the Appalachian Trail trail days. This is going to be mid-May every year. Again, banner's a little dated, but you have a lot of things to look at. This is just one of them. You want to know how crowded the trail is going to be, what's appropriate for you. So we're going to look first at weather. Winter lasts longer in the mountains. You can expect a 15-degree drop pretty easily just with some of the elevation you're going to see versus the town weather that you might be experiencing even in nearby cities. You're going to be looking for April and May if you want to catch a lot of the flower blooms. You're going to be looking for June for some of the rhododendron blooms, which we'll kind of talk about some areas for that later. You want to consider the through hiking season. So if you want to avoid some of the crowds, if you want to maybe have a better chance of getting in a shelter, know that a lot of northbound through hikers are going to start late February to early April. That's actually getting earlier and earlier, it seems, every year. You could also make it easy on yourself and just check the trail registers. So the Appalachian Trail now gives you the option to register, and so you can kind of see how many people are starting each day. So the more south you start, you can kind of try to project how many people are going to be up in different sections that you might be hiking. Of course, we mentioned Trail Days, which is mid-May in Damascus, Virginia, which we'll talk a little bit more about that trail town later. But if you're going to be in that area specifically. And then one more consideration would be hunting season. Namely October through November, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, which we're not going to be going over those states today, but it is a consideration for you at least to look into and know that you're walking into. So with that mouthful, oh, I missed a slide. All right, well, the slide's not there, but questions. We'll take a break. If you guys have questions, will anything coming in on Facebook, let me know that we can address or you want to address, or guys, anything in the chat box that we've got.
Not seeing anything in the chat yet, Bryan.
Oh, I do see George asked the name of the app again. It's called Gut Hook. Yep. Oh, yep. And it's answered by Nancy. Thanks. All right. Well, we'll keep rolling with it. Like I said, it's a lot to cover, and I wanted to get into get some basics out there, and then we'll get into some meat of it here with kind of where you guys want to go. So that's what this next section will go over. So here's what I looked at and kind of having some recommendations for you guys. The criteria is within 7 hours, less subject to extended seasons, more moderate terrain as far as the Appalachian Trail goes. When I give you difficulty, please understand that it's in relation to the rest of the Appalachian Trail. So it's all more difficult than what we have around here, of course. And then the trail access, there's multiple areas of trail access giving you options for different mileage or preferably loops. So as you're being introduced to the trail, those are going to cut back on some of the logistics that you might need to know and make things a little bit easier. So, there's my question slide. Perfect. All right. So we'll be covering these sections moving. I'm going to move southbound with these sections. We're going to go through Virginia's and southern Appalachia, including Shenandoah, the McAfee Knob area, Grayson Highlands, and then into Tennessee and North Carolina with the Roan Mountain, Roan Highlands, Max Patch, and the Smokies. And so starting off with Shenandoah. So Shenandoah National Park has constant 3,000 foot elevation, rolling hills, lots of deer, lots of black bear, lots of road crossings, and park kiosks, which is not something that we're going to say about the rest of the sections. Shenandoah National Park is a 108-mile stretch that winds in and out over the Blue Ridge Parkway. Because of this, you have many road crossings, but also what they call the waysides, which are the kiosks that we talked about. And these offer food and beer and sometimes blackberry milkshakes. And so it's definitely a nice break. It's like when we were there, they were all closed because we were there in winter. But especially if you're doing a longer section hike, it's definitely a very welcomed site to be able to kind of get on trail amenities like that. I like pointing out that the closest option for a base camp for all of these sections, and for this section, I'd recommend the Bears Den Hostel, and this is on the Virginia-West Virginia border. These base camps, as I go through them, are the best option for shuttle and lodging. And access along the trail. So they're going to offer a whole lot of things, but those to start. All right. So the Shenandoahs are about a 7-hour drive from Cincinnati. So if you're joining us from the local area, so it's one of our further destinations that we're going to talk about tonight. The park's main towns nearby are Elkton, Waynesboro, or Front Royal. These towns cut the 108 miles into about 55 and 63 mile sections. The difficulty, I'd say more on the easy to moderate side, kind of right in the middle there. As you do have constant ups or downs, it's a very much so a roller coaster. Natural water sources are typically available multiple per day. So water's usually pretty available. There's 10 shelters and 3 additional camps within this section along the way. And then a big plus for this section is that being in the national park, you'll find this more often, that they have bare cables or lockers provided for you. So your food storage is a little bit more carefree. You don't need to have the bear canister or a bear bag kit staying at one of the camps there. So if you're looking for a loop in this section, I would suggest trying the South and North Marshall loop. This is accessible from the Jenkins Gap parking lot. It's a 13.1 mile loop that includes Mount Marshall Trail to the Bluff Trail, which it'll be yellow blazes to get to the AT in that case. If you're in just for the day, and near the South Shenandoah area, go to the 7-mile Humpback Rocks loop. Very scenic, very easy, and the surrounding area has a plethora of wineries, breweries, distilleries, and cideries. So you can fill your time with some day hikes and whatever else you enjoy. Just make a nice vacation of it. And then as we move south, we get into what we call the Virginia Triple Crown area. Which, by the way, as we move south, that is the correct way to traverse the Appalachian Trail. If you're going north, just turn around and try again. That's a joke between Will and I. He's shaking his head. If you could see him, it's disappointing. There's tiny tears. So anyway, The Triple Crown is composed of 3 major features in Virginia that are all very scenic: Dragon's Tooth, Tinker Cliffs, and McAfee Knob. So here is Dragon's Tooth. So this section in general is about 6-hour drive from Cincinnati to Roanoke. In terms of the Appalachian Trail, we also labeled that this is in the easy to moderate category, with the exception to this rating is being the steep climb to Dragon's Tooth, which even has rebar in places to assist your ascent. So that can actually be a little bit more treacherous or difficult ascent to the Dragon's Tooth section of this. Water has been known to be scarce depending on the season, so pay attention as you'll be on the ridge line for much of this hike if you're doing this section. You're at the high point, which has seldomly has water. So this is a view from Tinker Cliffs. It's really cool. You could actually follow, you see the ridge line that goes from the left side of the screen around to the center dome there. So that's actually the ridge line you'll follow. We'll walk from this image left and then kind of around the valley to what would be McAfee's Knob on the other side. If you're on the AT, you have about 23 miles from Catawba to Daleville to try to go through this or through on this section. In this case, of course, that's a one-way. You'll need to find a shuttle. And my recommended base camp for this trip would be the Four Pines Hostel in Catawba. So that'd be who you reached out to for some of those resources. There are 4 shelters along with multiple campsites on this route. So you have a lot of freedom in daily distance as you go, or you could just take a nap like Joe here on McAfee Knob. And then us on our perch. So the more iconic shot of McAfee Knob here that has just outstanding, very rewarding views into the Catawba Valley. So looking at the entire Triple Crown, if you wanted to do it as a loop, which is how it's often referred, the Virginia Triple Crown has roughly 22 AT miles and then another 10 via the Andy Lane and North Mountain trails. So roughly 32 miles. It'll take you back to the Dragon's Tooth parking lot where you started. It's a nice loop, and you'll be much more self-sufficient. Altogether, trifecta of viewpoints, very awesome. You can also access any of these views on a day hike, but expect high traffic during the summer because they are accessible. So Tinker Cliffs are about 8.2 miles from a trailhead, McAfee Knob about 7 miles from a trailhead. So you could do these as day trips. And now to one of my favorites for sure. And this is actually, we're going to be going there in just a few weeks on our winter trip, Will and I and some other folks. So Grayson Highlands and the Mount Rogers National Recreational Area. With highlights that include wild or feral ponies, open prairies, an old canal trail as well. You can also find rhododendron, blueberries, spruce, fir, azaleas, moss, mushroom, wildflowers, rock outcroppings. This is a highlight list for real, the highlight reel of the Appalachian Trail. And the ponies aren't always shy, as you see Olivia here. You know, they're loving on her. It's good. You'll have about a 6-hour drive to Damascus, Virginia, where you'll have tons of options when setting up a base camp. So we mentioned Damascus earlier as being where Trail Days is. It's the largest trail town on the trail. This section is for sure considered more moderate in difficulty versus some of the easy moderate kind of stuff we talked about before. It's going to get increased elevation compared to the previous sections. Water can mostly just be found at the shelters and campsites. And again, require a little bit more paying attention and mapping depending on the season that you're going. In addition, here, we'll skip to this next one. Lots of ponies, right? For mapping it out, if you get one of the maps, Nat Geo has a Grayson-specific map, 786, versus using the Appalachian Trail maps. It's just a little bit better zoom in, especially if you're doing off-trail stuff. It's going to show some other trails other than the Appalachian Trail, so that's a good map to get. If you're looking at a loop, look at the Fairwood Valley Loop. It's 18.3 miles and uses the Mount Rogers Trail to access the AT. From there, there's lots of options that utilize other trails as well, just depending on the mileage that you want to work in. There are many camping and shelter options along the way here. So again, flexibility is pretty easy. However, a summit of Mount Rogers is a side trail. It's not going to be part of a loop or part of the AT for that matter. Mount Rogers is over 5,700 feet, but it is the state high point for Virginia. So a lot of people like doing that side trail. And how can we leave out of all the ponies? Fabio the pony. If you're looking for a longer section, hiking Damascus to Fox Creek Camp is 44 miles, plus a half-mile side trail to the AT. So if you want to piece a little bit more together, or you could do Damascus to Troutdale is 49 miles. So just depending on the number of days that you have, of course. Either is going to require a shuttle. You could shuttle from Mount Rogers Outfitter, The Place, Dave's Place, Crazy Larry's, or the Woodchuck Hostel. So again, this is a trail town. You have lots of resources here, making it a pretty awesome place to go. So hostels are not just great for the shuttles, of course, but to do laundry, rest pre or post trip, gather supplies, any of that stuff. For a shorter loop trip, a weekend hike, start from the Grindstone Campground parking area and hike a loop around by Old Orchard Shelter. And that's going to give you kind of like a little highlight reel over the weekend. Awesome views of the highlands there. Another parting shot there. From Damascus, you can also hit the Old Canal Trail. So the Virginia Creeper Trail follows the Old Canal, and it's a gravel trail. So it'd be a very easy hike. It's very pretty. And it's also bikeable. I think you can rent bikes in town with better tires to bike the gravel section there. FYI, the ponies will eat, lick, and could kick, but they'll definitely eat your socks. So if you leave your socks out to dry next to the tent, or have just been sweating uphill like Olivia was in the earlier picture, they're going to want to lick you a little bit too. All right. You guys all sticking with me, I hope. We'll take questions at the end again too, I promise. All right. We're going to move on to the Roan Highlands. The Roan Highlands are approximately 6 hours from Cincinnati and are insanely beautiful again. You may pass over Unaka Mountain, which is a unique summit with a like thick spruce forest. Roan Mountain, which you are traveling, if you are traveling north, is the last mountain above 6,000 feet until you get to New Hampshire. Again, we've built up an elevation here momentarily as we're going along this trip. Roan Mountains, or the Roan Highlands and Roan Mountain specifically, also has or boasts the highest shelter on the AT. So at 6,285 feet, the highest shelter where you could sleep along the AT. You'll pass over multiple rewarding views at Round Bald, Jane Bald, Hump, and Little Hump as well. So all kind of open balds like what we're seeing here in the picture. You can also expect the most consistently cold weather in southern Appalachia. So between Roan Mountain, Tennessee, and Irwin, Tennessee, there are 42 miles of trail, AT miles of trail. There are 6 trailheads that can be accessed by car. So shorter hikes are completely doable. Again, like we talked about, you could really break that down or add it back up to find a distance or a number of days that works for you, especially with the use of shuttle systems from the surrounding hostels. Some section breakdowns would include going 27 miles from Indian Grave Gap, which is outside of Irwin, to Carver's Gap. It's going to be a great section. That's on the north side of Roan. You'd go up to the north side of Roan, past it. You could stretch this to 36 miles if you just start at Irwin, or up to 51 miles if you start at Elk Park. Again, with the guidebooks are going to go all over this. You guys don't need to remember the numbers or anything, but just as an expression of the different distances that you could do and the bigger or smaller trips that you could put together. Guidebooks and maps are going to break this down for you pretty easy. So But the more you can squeeze in this section, the better. So, when I stretch that out to the 51 miles, if you make that happen, go for it, because that's all a great section, that entire bed. Little picture from Over Mountain Shelter, which is now closed, considered not safe to sleep in. So this is just a little reminder, an example of why to check some of those updates, as you don't want to plan on staying places that aren't actually there anymore. So. So if you're going to do something along the Roan Highlands, set up your base camp one of a few places depending on the section. You have Uncle Johnny's Hostel on the Nullichucky. He does shuttles, resupply, and has private rooms. They're in Irwin and could shuttle anywhere in the area. You have Bluff Mountain Outfitters in Hot Springs, which is literally on the trail. Or you have a personal favorite, the Mountain Harbor Hiker Hostel, basically on the trail, and in the Roan Mountain area, year-round shuttles and amazing breakfast. I think it's $13, and you only get like 10 people's worth of food per person, and just everything you could ever want. So I always mess up and I go there pre-trip, and when you can't eat enough, do yourself a favor and definitely go there post-trip when you could get the most out of the breakfast. Missing slide. Oh. All right, so late June, we talked about the rhododendrons, but this is a great area for the purple blooming rhodos. So if you can get the timing right, it could be great. And you could also do a lot of these as day hike options. So the Roan Summit or some of the surrounding balds could be easily accessed by road, and you could go as little as a mile or two up and kind of take in some of those views from the balds. So we'll look at the shelter at Roan High Knob. So this is in a rare case where it's a four-sided shelter, four-walled shelter with a door. It's not a common case, but just since you can get a little bit worse weather up there, they give you a little bit more. This one's gonna be a little bit quicker. It's a short one, but I have to mention it for its easy and open views. Max Patch, the southernmost bald on the AT, is at 4,629 feet. A good support hub for this, again, could be the Bluff Mountain Outfitters. You can also use Standing Bear Farms, the northern part of the Smokies, or Laughing Heart Lodge. Or Elmer's Sunnyside B&B in Hot Springs, also a good AT staple there, the Elmer's. So Max Patch is a beautiful spot to catch a sunrise or sunset there. So for Max Patch, you can go Green Corner Road over Max Patch to Hot Springs, a nice 33-mile section. Travel and shuttle pretty well. You could also turn it into, there's options for a 19-mile, like shorter weekend, or you can do the day hike for Max Patch. So if you're just even in the area doing something totally different, it's less than 2 miles up to the Max Patch Bald from the road. So this is for sure a stopover that you should make at the very least. And the last on our list, and one you guys might be more familiar with, Smoky Mountain National Park. So finally the Smokies, a section of the trail that we'd rate definitely more moderate to hard, with a healthy population of black bears, old growth forest, and high peaks, including the AT's highest point, Klingman's Dome, at 6,643 feet. It's highly diverse flora and old burn areas. A few things make this section different. Permits are required for overnights and must be at shelters or campsites, those designated areas. These permits are available, I'd have to check recently, but they used to be 38 days in advance, but can also fill up fast. There's no pets allowed, no hiking with your dog through this section. But on the plus side, again, bear cables or lockers, just like the Shenandoahs, are provided. And of course, this is because bears are very active in the Smokies, see a high population of people, a lot of traffic every year. A shorter drive at 5 hours, depending on your starting point for the Smokies. So we're working further south from Cincinnati because we're not making that time trekking as far east. They're actually one of the closer spots. There's a few loop options here. One favorite being the Mount Cameron loop. Again, there's lots of options, but it's going to give you panoramic views from a stone tower at the top of Mount Cameron. It's an 18-mile loop with, depending on which way you go, but if you take the grunt of it first, you have a 3,000-foot climb and would probably end up staying at Cosby Knob Shelter, and then you kind of loop back down using the Big Creek Trail to go back to Big Creek Ranger Station where you parked. So pretty easy loop, and as you come back Big Creek, of course, you're walking creekside the whole time, and you have a few different falls to pass as you work your way back to the car. A nice easy day out at that point. So an awesome option. If you're covering larger sections, you can travel, especially if you're trying to build in section hiking, you could do 70 miles for a total traverse from Fontana to Davenport Gap. Be a pretty big section. You can cut that section in about half by stopping at Newfound Gap. It's about 30-ish miles if you went from Big Creek Ranger Station, for example, to 441, which is Newfound Gap. If you did that section, so again, cutting it in half, you'd still be passing you'd be doing the section with Mount Cameron and also Charlie's Bunyan as some highlights, and we'll show you a picture of that in a minute as well. A good base camp is to park and stay at Standing Bear Hostel, where you can arrange shuttles. You can also try Bluff Mountain Outfitters in Hot Springs, still not too far away, as everything we've been talking about is pretty back to back here. Or from the NOC, Nantahala Outdoor Center, which is in Gatlinburg, to do shuttles as well. Shuttle you to Big Creek, for example. But either way, it's so much of it is one way if you're trying to cover big AT miles. So you're going to have to hitchhike back to town or vice versa, hitchhike out, get a ride back. Just a little bit more work logistically, how you're going to put it together, perhaps. All right. And then if you're going out for just the day, go to Newfound Gap. If I had to name one spot, and take yourself to Charlie's Bunyan. So an 8-mile round trip from Newfound Gap will take you here. If you look over our left shoulders to the left shoulder to the prominent peak there is Mount LeConte. It's another favorite of mine, but couldn't make the presentation because it's not along the Appalachian Trail. Sorry, guys. We could talk about that later as another great Smokies trip or day hike along the Smokies. And now my question side pops out. But before we do this, thank you for sticking with me, guys. I want to launch a second poll here. Well, Nancy, will it let you launch a poll by chance? It's not giving me the option.
You see that one, Brian? Is that what you wanted?
Number 2?
Yes.
Yeah, I can't see it, but as long as they do.
Okay, it's there.
All right, perfect. So the question is, if you had to pick right now, try to fit this all into an hour and kind of steamroll through some stuff. Again, thank you for that. With those little tidbits, where do you want to go? I'm curious where everyone picks. So, we went through from Shenandoah to the Virginia Triple Crown, right? To the Mount Rogers, Grayson Highlands area. Continued through to the Roan Highlands, Max Patch, and Smokies.
So I'm watching the numbers come in, and about 76% of people have voted. And it's looking like almost a tie between Shenandoah and the Great Smoky Mountains so far.
Very cool. Well, there's a reason they're national parks. There's a lot there.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and stop the polling and share it. I'm sorry, go ahead. Gary?
Nobody's voted for Max Patch. I think you need to talk that one up, Brian. It's a great trip.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and end it and share it so everyone can see it.
There's not a bad answer. So while we're sharing that, we did actually have one question that came in from email as well, and it was more regarding where to go locally to train to get out on the Appalachian Trail. And that's a question we get a lot at the shop because the terrain is so much different along the Appalachian Trail. How do you really get ready for it? And it's tough. Honestly, it's a tough answer. I'll take your guys' input if you guys have anything to say as well. But honestly, it's just getting out as much as you can. Anything you could do is going to be better than not doing it, right? So try to aim for the hills. We'd go to the nature center a lot and try to tackle some of the harder trails, some of those long step up hills. I concentrate a lot on stadiums and stadium steps just to try to mimic that constant uphill as much as I can. So Nippert Stadium is close to me. That's UC's stadium. But wherever you could go to put in the miles, if you have a long weekend and can make it to the Red River Gorge or something like that, you're going to see a little bit more terrain, a little bit more elevation gain and loss. That's going to prepare you a little bit better as well. But guys, if you have anything to add to that.
No, I agree with you. The best way to train is to go out and hike and to find the hills where you can. We've even gone to up to Germantown and hike the steps up and down the back of the dam. And
that's a great idea.
Yeah. And in a pinch, when I can't get out, I'll put on my pack and go up and down the steps inside my house from the basement to the second floor.
Especially with this weather, maybe. How are we doing on the chat box, guys, or the Facebook chat box, Will? What questions can we answer for you? What did you want to know more about that we rolled over? Go ahead and shoot them out at us.
What was the name of the 13-mile loop in the Shenandoah National Park that you mentioned?
Let's just go back to it. The 13-mile in Shenandoah. Oh, the South and North Marshall Loop. Sorry, lots of trails going through my head. South and North Marshall Loop. We actually have a good blog on RT's site on that. The Goat Man, who I referenced earlier, did a good blog on some good AT trips from Cincinnati, and he does go a little bit more in detail and reviews that. So you could kind of check that out on our website as well, some more details.
I see another question here, Brian. Someone is asking, what was the section in the picture at the beginning of your presentation?
Oh man, bear with me. Let go back into review. So let's see. I guess there's a few. So I had my intro slide with the snowy hair, and that was actually in the Smokies. Then I had a slide with a super heavy, ridiculous looking pack that was about 75 pounds because it was my first day backpacking, which was my first day on the Appalachian Trail. That was in Maine. So
they clarified it's a picture that had 2 hikers in it.
Oh, okay. That would have been Joe and I, and that would have also been in Maine. So that would have been in Baxter State Park, near Mount Katahdin in Maine. Maine being one of my favorite states, Maine and New Hampshire, on the Appalachian Trail. Just a little bit harder to get to and a little bit more difficult from an intro perspective, but amazing for sure.
Another question someone's asking is, what's a good sleeping pad option? So they say it seems like sleep is a big deal after more than a couple of days.
Totally. Yeah. So this is kind of one of those areas, when I was through hiking, I had one of the thin rollout foam pads. I was also 25, and it was totally fine. It was fine. We did a lot of shelter camping. There was less under under the pad, the difference that I needed a lot of protection, and I could bounce off things. I was young. I can't do those pads anymore. Moving to an inflatable pad, or some people move to a self-inflating pad depending on your requirements for weight versus some comfort. Just gives you a lot more protection underground. So you'll pay attention to a few things, the thickness of the pad, but a lot on the insulation of the pad, and make sure that you're covered there as well. Ease of use. There's a whole lot to look at that we'd be happy to go over with you in the shop, though, for sleeping pads. But
I see 2 more questions. Did you just freeze up, Bryan?
Oh.
There he is. Okay.
Did we miss all of that?
It looked like you froze up. Sorry. One of them was, one question is, did you carry any solar chargers? And then someone else is asking if permits are required to start a through hike.
We did not carry solar chargers at the time. I will, from time to time, carry just a small, like, single recharge, like a Goal Zero, just like a really small, pen size almost kind of recharge for a single phone. As far as permits go, not to start hiking, you don't have to. It's just requested. It's not required. They ask that you register with the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. That definitely is going to help them know how many people are out, when, and where, which is important for them to continue their mission to protect the land and to know the total users out there. But that's not a requirement. It's also going to help you understand how many people are, going to be in the area with you. The only registrations or permits are going to be at the Smokies for every, well, if you're through hiking, it's a general permit. They give you, I believe, 21 days to get through the area, which is way too much. I don't know if that's changed. But if you're going for a section or overnights, you have to get a permit for every place that you are sleeping. And like I said, those fill up fast. Shenandoah is a walk-up permit, so it is permitted, but you basically fill out a form as you walk into the park. So it's not like a pre-requested thing.
So I don't know if you have time for more questions. There are a couple more that have come into the chat box. Do you
Sure,
want me to?
happy.
Okay. All right. There's one person asked, did you ever get sopping wet, and how did you dry out or get warm?
I was lucky that we did invest in some pretty good gear when we first started. Although I was a novice, Joe in the picture was an Eagle Scout, and in a lot of ways prepared us. So we had full, rain gear, top and bottom. But accidents still happen. The worst of it was probably I stepped off a bog bridge in, I believe, Vermont. A bog bridge is basically when it's just like a mud pit and you're walking a board to avoid it. Except for this mud pit, when I accidentally stepped off of it, I was about hip deep. And so, of course, all the moisture and mud is soaking into my boot, into my sock, and into my pant. And mind you, this is probably October. It is cold. So you just have to know when to call it. We didn't do our full day. We went to a shelter. We changed clothes into of course, we always had dry sleep clothes, something warm I could put on. So just kind of getting somewhere to rest for the night, getting dry, and if need be, getting in the sleeping bag to make sure that you can kind of retain all of your heat. There's just one other time where it was an instance like that where we felt like we could have been in a danger zone if we did not stop early. So knowing when to call it, when to stop early, setting up camp was safe.
And I see one more if you want to take time for the last one.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, it says, I'm planning a trip with a younger new hiker who wants to section hike some of the AT and wants to start in Georgia. What are your thoughts on Georgia? Would you recommend a first timer starting somewhere else?
Georgia could be great, but I will say that especially in the beginning of Georgia, if you wanted to hike, if you wanted to hike the AT from beginning to end, it's a tough climb. For example, at the start point, Amacola Falls. Did I get that right? Thanks. Will shaking his head. That's a steep climb, but then Blood Mountain is a very steep climb. Those are challenging places for a new hiker. I think once you get past, whatever that is, the first, I think Georgia's only 70 miles, and that those should be in the first 30 to 40 miles, some of those things. I do feel like Georgia eases up a little bit, but there are some challenging spots in the beginning of Georgia there that you might just want to work around. But of course, if you just wanted to kind of do it in order from beginning to end, it just takes some more training to get there. Cool. Guys, thank you. Thanks for joining. Thanks for sticking with us. I'm going to, if you don't mind sticking with us a little bit further, I actually have, oh, now I'm not progressing again. We have one more poll, if you don't mind. It's actually number 3, not number 2, but and that's just for us. How did we do? Feel free to keep typing questions, by the way, but also just how did we do? This is, of course, concludes the presentation, but want to know what you got out of it, what we can improve on. So again, you could find this if you missed some of it. It's going to be, it's going to live on Facebook, on the RRT page, but also we'll have a PDF copy on the Sierra Club website, where we'll also have the recording on the Sierra Club website, where you can also find a list of other upcoming events. So definitely check that out. Let's see. If there's a topic you'd be interested in, please use the chat box to let us know that as well. Of course, we'll be planning some more in-person things as soon as we can. Did we get, Nancy, did we get poll 3 launched?
It's been launched and the answers have been given and it's all done.
All right, awesome, thanks. I hope you guys enjoyed the options for the answers there. I don't know why my poll button isn't working. But, awesome. Well, again, thank you for joining us today. Of course, this has been presented to you by Road Rivers and Trails. Hopefully you're independent owned outdoor outfitter for all of your needs there. Come check us out, 108 Main Street in Milford, Ohio. Give us a call, check out our website. Also, thank you to Nancy for helping out today. Summit Trek and Travel for adventure travel. Check them out as well. And of course, the Miami group Sierra Club for putting this all together. So keep up with us and what we have going on. Thank you.